Welcome to Echoes, Hong Kong and China, Voicing the Collection, the Portico Library. This pre-description to the film is 4 minutes long. The film is 17 minutes. Warning, this audio and the film contain quotations from historic books which are offensive, and there is discussion of lived experience of racism. The film shows many of the exhibits, while we hear interviews with the co-creators of the exhibition. In glass cases are books and documents in Chinese with vertical lines of print, and books in English about East Asia and Southeast Asia. Titles on display include Chinese Festivals and Myths of China. A book about Victorian tourists shows Western men wearing Japanese kimonos. There are dual language signatures stamped in red using a square seal. A big table charts the evolution of Far Eastern place names in traditional and simplified Chinese and in historic and modern anglicised forms. A round paper fan is blazoned with the swirling, brush-painted word for lucky, hu, and the English word prosperity. A photo shows a multicultural group of smiling young men posing like a band in matching stripy suits and quiffs. An ID document for British merchant shipping is filled out in Chinese and English with a Chinese man's photo. Visitors to the exhibition are East Asian, South Asian and white, male and female, young and old. Artworks were commissioned specially for this exhibition. Jasmine Gardner produced an installation with the long title, A Sudden Influx of Swarms of Hideous Chattering Chinese Coolies, Major Henry Knollys, 1885. The installation consists of 100 small red paper-cut creatures with many claw-like legs. The paper cuts are placed clustering high on bookshelves and peeping round the edges of open books. Jasmine also made an artwork called I Think You're Wrong. England isn't racist. I never hear any racism. A white man from Essex, named Andrew, 2020. The artwork is a huge screen of hand-cut paper cutting, 1.5 metres high and 8 metres fully extended, that stands up in zigzag sections along the top of a line of bookcases. The white screen with its design of seething, swirling coils inside a straight border brightens and dominates the space, masking the dark library shelves behind it. Some people with the short Cantonese surname spelled NG choose the pronunciation ng, and some use NG, which is easier for English speakers to say. There's a family portrait by Deborah Ng, the NG's family. Against a collage of high-rise buildings, a smiling family of daughter, parents and son show symbols of their achievements and things they treasure: a doctor's badge, a guitar, a framed certificate, a professional lanyard, a cross and a heart symbol. As Dr. Debbie Chalice, the creative producer, speaks, she handles an old brown book. Embossed on the cover is a gleaming spot formed of concentric gold circles. She places the book under a glass case. The gold spot appears as a motif in the exhibition titles. One of the contributors is Shi Yichao, critical friend and Mandarin teacher. Shi is her family name, which comes first in the Chinese format. Yichao is her personal name. In the film, her name appears in the English format, with the family name last. Echoes exhibition. Gold lettering in Chinese and English reads 曼自思彻中国城 Chinatown, Manchester. A red lantern sways. A Chinese couple shop amid lit-up vertical Chinese signs. A Chinese man takes a photo. Glistening roasted meats hang in a window. A lucky cat beckons with its mechanical paw. Outdoors, multicultural crowds walk the streets, overlooked by the ornate Chinese gate of Manchester Chinatown. Indoors, a dancing Chinese lion rears up in the Portico Library, one dancer within the two-person costume jumping onto the shoulders of the other. A delighted audience applauds. Prancing playfully, the lion casts from its mouth little toy lions, which are caught by laughing audience members. A dance troupe member passes one to a blonde toddler girl. She cuddles the toy. Two young dancers take off the costume and bow, a Chinese boy and a ginger-haired girl. They duck back under the costume and the lion comes back to life. A little Chinese boy runs up to it and peeks underneath at the child dancers. Audience members pet the lion's huge red head and giggle when it flaps its ears. Maxine Hunt, International Strategy Advisor.
So when I think of a dynamic collection, it's actually quite at odds with my experience of viewing collections and participating. And there's a contrast there. You go to an art gallery, you go to a museum, things are quite static. So when I think of the concepts of a dynamic collection, I think what it would mean to me is something that was quite tactile, something that you could be more immersed in a way that wasn't just viewer-object. In terms of access to heritage collections, they can feel quite out of reach, and they can feel like something that's difficult to do. So I think being part of this programme has really made me see how you can make heritage collections more accessible in a way that's really meaningful and a way that works with the community. All voices have a place, and I think it can be very difficult in a public programme to authentically reflect such a difficult subject matter in a way that is meaningful. So I think the approach was not only quite pioneering, but also really impactful. With the participant-led approach, it really allowed, I think, freedom of expression and authenticity of thought and emotion. And I think when you visit the exhibition, that really comes through. Reading can be such a singular activity, and it can be very much based on the reader's experience and environment, but also the writer's narrative. So when I think about voicing the collection, what comes to mind the most is humanising the narrative, especially with this collection of books and this period of history. It's really bringing a context that is both modern and reflective of that period of time in a way that I found really thoughtful, engaging, and at times quite moving. In terms of my involvement with this programme, it was very much about assessing and highlighting where there may be political sensitivities. And the purpose for this is it's a very confronting period of British history. And I think the Portico has run the programme in a very thoughtful way through the co-creation structure. And I really hope that my advice was helpful to contributing to keeping those voices, those community voices, centred.
Aparpat Jayin Glynn, Exhibitions and Volunteer Coordinator, Artist and Curator.
Voicing this collection to me means a lot because the books that are surrounding us right now and throughout the collection were written 200 years ago in the point of a colonial lens, white men, power. They also, some traveled to the other side of the world, some didn't, but just write from their seat. And people keep citing their works, although that is just one-sided opinions, they're not facts. But because it was there a long time ago and it's still here now, people treat them as facts and forget that this is just opinions and one side of the story. So voicing the collection, especially with China and Hong Kong and East Asia, is important to me because it's the act that we put the mirror up to the collection and say, hey, what was said 200 years ago from one white man that actually have all the power and the money and the time to write all this might not be something that is fair and true. Let's listen to someone who actually hold that heritage in their blood and see the encounter. And people can think for themselves what is fair. I think it's a very powerful move, and I think it gives that narrative that was missing from this collection to become relevant and alive and fair. So one of the pieces of artworks that we commissioned that really speak to me on a personal level is Jasmine's work. It's a little red creatures that we install around the library next to the bookshelf And it's not just one side, but it's scattered around. And they are in the shape of little spider with claws, with like really long nails and some with eyes. They're all in red. And the way we install them, they look like they're moving towards a book or come out from the books under voyage and travel section or around. When I talked to Jasmine about this, when she looked through the collection, she was like, there's a lot of terms and words that of course is racist, but a lot of microaggression that she read from the books, and it happened to her and me as well in real life, just every day. Nothing changed in our thinking in that, because we still absorb from the books and we still absorb from people around the street. So she took that as an inspiration and carved 100 of these little red creatures and installed them to climb back to the books, like these little microaggression that turn into a creature, climb back to those books and eat away. It's to flip the narrative, and it's to flip the feeling. So when people walked in, like, what are those little creatures, and read what is actually coming from. And it also linked them to see the books as well and what actually was being written or published. Certainly one of the challenge as someone who is from Thailand, have Southeast Asian heritage in this space, the challenge itself is me working with the collection, because I would be looking through the books, reading something from Southeast Asia 200 years ago, and I would be like, this is not true. This is not fair. And you start building up the feeling of rage or upsetness with it without you knowing sometimes. And then suddenly, one afternoon, you just feel upset about it. You feel like you need to cry. That happened to me. And I just need to take a step back, breathe, and think about what happened and why that emotion occurs to me, and what can I actually do to change that. Because again, like, it's the opinions, it's not the facts that are surrounding us, but you can see the result of these facts being published again and again, and cited again and again in textbooks, in the culture, in what people think and say. And you feel like you need to own that, you need to change that. That's certainly one of my challenges, that I need to be really present with my emotion, take the time with it, and speak to the staff team and people who work with me, like what's going on. Just try to be very present and know and mindful what's going on with yourself, because it could be really hard some days with this collection. But I think the fact that we're here and we can support change, we can voice it, and we can get the people who were excluded in the collection to have the voice back in this place is a very powerful thing that I don't think 200 years ago people would think it would happen, but we're making it happen now. So it's a very powerful move, and we just need to remind ourselves that we're part of the change. We're a little voice that we can keep adding, and it will be better.
Circle Steele, CEO of Y Yin Society and community partner.
I just visit the exhibition, very interested about Hong Kong and China, and then very nice to see the simplified language and traditional, and English. This is trilingual. This is what we normally do in our community. So the multilingual, the language is also important. When the people, especially our community member, they don't really read English as well, and they can see, even they have some eyesight when they're getting old, they can see the language there, traditional or simplified, and then they feel something really adjust to them, But we know some of our members say, you tell me what they're talking about. I just saw outside the firm, they got the headphone. I can hear the person talk about Cantonese, actually, about and the seamen, how to collect the stone. It's very, very interesting. But I think that is also important, I'm sure now a lot multilingual exhibition or any hall, that's also related to the community member. Normally, they don't really come here because they assume they all English. I don't understand. I can see the 100 years book here, but if they see some of the book with their language, that attachment is very important, very special, because it's their relationship. They feel secure, they feel safe space, they feel they can able to share their story. They feel that place is not a stranger. So that attachment also build some trust for them to talk about their own thing. You also bring about social change as well, because people just think this just library, 100 years library. Yes, and some of the heritage, some of the footprint belong to them, actually community member to own it, and that is also significant, important.
Yichao Shi, Yichao Shi, critical friend and Mandarin teacher.
Basically, I'm a book lover. Also, plus my academic background. So it's focused on mainly Chinese history and culture, but I do like ancient book. And when I found, Manchester, we have this library, so I immediately, do some, went here and joined the volunteer work as well. For the case I'm doing is I particularly choose the oldest version in this library. And also, because of my background, so I focus on what the style of book looks like. So I also choose the same period Chinese book to compare. So that's, I'm quite excited about that. So the reason I choose that book is because that book talk about the China in all aspect. The time before 1841, including culture, language, economy, and everything. And also that particular book is all material actually from Chinese book. So from actually real Chinese book. So I choose that book. It's really beautiful picture as well.
Dr. Debbie Chalice, creative producer.
What's really brought it home to me, working with lots of different people from lots of different experiences, both in this exhibition Echoes and also in the Weird as Folk exhibition, has been the joy that also people brought to it. And I think with Echoes, it's also that sense of, sort of Jasmine's called out the microaggressions of racism in her everyday life and also in the collection here, but she's also used her own identity and her own kind of skill as an artist to kind of reflect on that. And so, and seeing that picture of a family, in Echoes by Deborah, it's the people, and it's just putting the people back into the books, really. And it's just it's realising that you read a book, you read a text, but these all have influence and they all have impact. And I think just putting, what you might think is a dry, dusty old 19th century book with people from the 21st century and seeing what can happen. And for me, that's just been an absolute joy. The highlights for me with Echoes was just watching the gallery be transformed again. I mean, it's a gallery, it's a library, it's a multi-purpose place, it's a cafe. We do so many different things in it. Each exhibition looks completely different, and that's partly the talent of Upper Pat, but it's also the talent of our volunteers. But particularly with Weird as Folk and with Echoes, they look so different. Just watching people having chosen the books and putting them in the cases and dropping off their artwork and just gradually watching it all come together. And I even WhatsApp from Rome. I was in Rome for the last day just to see what it looked like because I was so excited. But I think for me, the absolute highlight of Echoes was watching Jasmine's artwork go up because, again, it just made the space look completely different. The red creatures, the microaggressions that she has coming out of the cases, I just thought it was such a profound and kind of just a visceral sort of reaction to our books and the attitudes in them. And for me, that was the highlight, is seeing the artworks come in and just seeing it all come together.
Deborah Ng, critical friend.
I think the first highlight would be the tactile experience of handling the texts or the materials as part of the collections, which are the books related to or discussing China and Hong Kong. I think that's a very special moment. Another highlight is translating my interpretation of those texts into condensed written panels. That's another intellectual challenge in itself that is very fun to do, actually, because I have to understand how I'm going to make my perspectives engaging and also easily understood to a wider audience. I think the third highlight is rushing through the painting, because that's actually quite a last-minute decision when we were drafting our panel text. And I remember spending a few weeks of day and night to finish the digital painting. I made it through, and I remember having a pint of beer to celebrate that. So that, I think these are the big highlights, but of course when the exhibitions have been put together, it's really, really satisfying and fulfilling to see all our different perspectives coming together into one coherent exhibition. So there's a lot of highlights, but I treasure them a lot.
Aparpat Jayin Glyn.
I think there was one time when we opened the library a bit longer, so the critical friends can sit around the table, talk to you, Imogen and Alice, and look through the books together. I think at that point, you can see the excitement ooze out from them and the power they want to bring to the place. I think they got a lot of, enthusiasm that can spread out and quite infectious to people. So I feel that, and it's fresh eyes as well to look into the collection. They see things that as a staff we might not see, and we might not grab to it and reinterpret in a creative way. So that was one of my highlights to see. Another one is, I think, when I start to see people coming through the doors that they speak Chinese or they speak my language or they're from East or Southeast Asia. So it changed the dynamic in the room of not just the same people that keep coming to the Portico, but it's a new side and new demographics that say everything to me. That's one of my highlights to see. It's working.
Maxine Hunt.
I think just being here on opening night was such a fantastic experience. Hearing people talk about the collection and the narrative, and having the critical friends able to reflect on the work but also their work in response, it felt like a very circular moment. And I think it's quite fortunate to be able to be involved in a programme like this, and for it to be so accessible to different groups of people, because that's not necessarily an experience that you're able to have, especially, as I said, towards the heritage sector. It can be quite hard to be involved to this extent. So it was a very valuable experience to be a part of.
Director and cinematographer Paul Daly, interviewer and commissioner Polly Steiner, additional artists Matt Lingard, Jessie Tam, performance Master Tang Lion Dance Team, music Zakar Valaha, Zambolino, Keys of Moon and ET11LX, audio description by AudioMo, with thanks to the Heritage Fund.